This conference will now be recorded.
Hi Raju, let's start. So let the people join. So in this session, right, we are going to discuss about EBS volumes basically. So, but before that, we need to understand what are the different types of storage available when it comes to EC2. Okay, let's discuss about that one. And further, we'll go ahead and discuss about the EBS volumes. Okay, so let's understand. See, what are the different, first of all, what are the different types of storage available? The first one is called as elastic block store. Okay, the first type of storage is elastic block store, and it is also called as EBS basically. Okay, the first type of hi Karthik, we're discussing about the storage. I'm just explaining what are the different types of storages available in AWS. So I'm starting with elastic block store. Okay, and it is called as EBS. This is nothing but the storage we allocate to EC2. For example, imagine if we have some EC2 machine, right? In the EC2 machine, we might require like extra drives. We'll get operating system for 8 GB. Apart from that, you want to have extra drives, like for example, in Windows, D drive, E drive, F drive, extra drives, right? We need to use elastic block store. Okay, and we have one more called as instance store. We have one more called as instance store. These two storage are actually assigned to EC2 instances, or assigned to EC2 instances. I'll tell you the differences. Okay, next different types of storage available is, and okay, let me tell you one thing, and these are called as block storages. These both are block storage. Of course, the name itself is elastic block store, but why you call that as a block store? Because the storage is assigned in blocks basically. For example, you require like 10 GB, 20 GB, 1 TB, 2 TB, like it is assigned you in the blocks. Okay, that's why it's called as block storage. Now, apart from this the above two are assigned to the EC2 servers, and we have something called as elastic file system, which is called as basically EFS, elastic file system. And this is nothing but it is actually called as network file system, NFS. For this is actually Unix file system, which is used by, it's a share folders. You remember, right? In companies we have the share folder, something like we're going to put server one like this, right? Similarly, elastic file system is a shared storage, not a block storage. This is a file storage. That means you are not going to assign any 10 GB, 100 GB blocks and create a file system. See, in elastic block store, we need to format the disk and create the file system on it, which I'm going to show it to you today. Okay, but in our elastic file system, we don't need to do any formatting, everything. It's just a share folder. Okay, we need to access, it's a file storage, we're going to access over the network, access over the network. Okay, and then mount it and save the files. Okay, no need of formatting or creating a file system. So the other type of storages apart from this are, it's called simple storage service, which is actually S3, also called as object storage. Okay, and also I have one more called as Glacier, which is archive storage, which we are going to discuss later. There is no point right now to discuss about this one, but we'll discuss about later. Right now we are going to concentrate our class on elastic block store and instance store. We're going to talk about these two. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this and I'm going to open a new notepad and I'm going to paste it here. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually deploy a machine. So I'm going to click on launch instance. Now select Amazon Linux, select T2 micro, configure details, Select your VPC, which is this one. Select your subnet. Calm down, and you have your public IP. Fine. I'm going to give some IP like 10.1.1.100, and I'm going now see next is add storage. Okay, add. So I click on add storage. Now by default, this is a root storage basically. That means this is an operating system drive. So we have different types of storage, which we are going to discuss in the next class, like general purpose, provisioned IOPS, and magnetic, because time won't be sufficient. We're going to talk about what are the types of storage like EBS as well as instance store, how we can assign it. Right now it is only having 8 GB drive. If you want further bigger drive, we can actually give 10 GB. We can also expand it later also. Okay, so only the operating system will contain in this drive. If you want to add additional drives, you can actually add a new volume. You see showing EBS, you can give whatever the size of the volume you want, but we can do it later. Okay, so for now what I'm going to do is I'm going to deploy this machine basically. Okay, I don't go not going to deploy this machine, just I want to give you a test. Let's do one thing. Let's go to previous. What I want to show you is here. You see, when I'm trying to select a machine under the instance storage, right, you are seeing EBS only, EBS only, EBS only. If you keep on going down, right, at one point you see instead of EBS only, you will get 1 into 75 GB SSD. What exactly is this? So wherever you see EBS only, that means this particular machine will be given elastic block storage only. So what are the features of elastic block store? The features of elastic block storage, first one, it's a persistent or permanent storage. That means if you keep some data inside elastic block store, if you stop the server or reboot the server, still the data will remain. Data is not going anywhere. Second thing is the EBS volume can be increased but not decreased. Okay. Third one is we can have the volume between 1 to 1 GB to 16 TB. Okay, so these are the characteristics of a EBS elastic block store basically. So the most important is it's persistent and permanent storage. So the EBS volume can be increased, as well as it can increase up to 16 TB from 1 GB. So wherever you see something called as EBS, all these characteristics are applicable for the volumes you create for this one. Now coming further, right, you can able to see 1 into 75 gigs of SSD, right, 1 into 75 gigs of SSD. Wherever you see something like this, what that means is along with the EBS, you will get some extra space, something like this, which is actually called as instance store. Okay, there is no extra charge, but it is called as instance store. So wherever you see this one, that means you can also use EBS volumes. Apart from this, you will get, for example, 4 into 900 GB SSD drives extra for you. It's a big server. And again, if you go down, again it is showing EBS one. That means these machines are not eligible for any of the instance store, only certain machines. Now we need to understand what is this instance store and what is this, how it looks like from if I see from like 1,000 feet, right, how exactly this instance store is different from EBS volume. For that, I'm going to draw a diagram. Now imagine a physical server basically. So this is a physical server. So best example physical server is HP DL 380 G10 server. Okay, so you can also go and Google it. So I'll go here. I'll say HP DL 380 G10. If I go to images, right? So you see a lot of servers here. So for example, let's take this server for example. So if you see this server, right? So this is a physical server, and whatever the things you see right here, the little green things, these are all the hard drives actually. These are all the hard drives which are coming default with the box, or you can actually choose. Now consider the same thing here in this diagram. So imagine this is a physical server. It is coming with some sort of storage. Some sort of storage. Now let me tell you, this is actually server local storage. You can call this as server local storage. Now let me tell you, we can actually create an instance here. When I create an instance, imagine, so EC2, when I create a EC2 instance here, now wherever you see something like, for example, 1 into 75 GB, right? That means this 75 GB is actually coming from here. This is basically the instance store, 75 GB instance store. This is getting assigned to the server. Now the problem with the instance store is, so whatever exactly opposite. So in instance store, the data will be deleted if we remove, if we start and stop the, or I can say like stop and start, not reboot. Reboot kadandi. So it's not reboot, okay? Not reboot. See, the data will be deleted if we stop and start the server. Not reboot, by the way. If you reboot, server will be there. Second thing is, we cannot change in the storage size, or size of the instance store. That means since we can't change change the size of the instance store, obviously it cannot be, the second point and third point are not valid. Okay, so this is the difference between EBS as well as instance. So now the question arises, where exactly the EBS? So EBS is actually a separate, what you need to imagine is, imagine a separate big box. It is actually, you can call it as EBS, but if you take like storage team, right, you can call it as a SAN or NAS box, SAN box, which has like hundreds of storage which will offer. That means you can also get volume from here. This volume can be 1 GB to 16 TB, and this can be assigned from here. Okay, so now if you see in the picture, so the EBS volume can be increased, data is persistent, and it can go up to 16 TB, whereas the server local storage is basically fixed. So it cannot, means local storage means instance store can be, is it fixed, and it can increase or decrease. Okay, now I want to deploy you a server and show it to you how exactly it will work. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going back here. My plan is, I want to implement a server M3 medium actually, but if you see, you will not find any M3 medium basically here. So the reason behind it is, you need to select all generations. Basically, you can go top and select all generations as seen in the picture. Okay, when you select all generations, and if you further come down, right, so basically you should be able to see M3. So I'll actually come down and sorry, M3 medium, yeah, this one. So if you see M3 medium, the reason I chose M3 medium is, so you will get 1 into 4 GB of SSD. That means you will get a EBS volume. Along with that, you also get a 1 into 4 GB of SSD. So I'm going to select this. Okay. And next is configure instance details. Select VPC subnet 1. So give 10.1.1.100. Add storage. You see, this is 8 GB. I can make it into 10 GB also. Okay, 8 GB. And you see, this is basically the instance store. I'm assigning 4 GB. Now you can also add volumes here also. Of course, you can only add one instance store because that is only, it is showing only 1 into 4 GB. So you can't increase this 4 GB or decrease this 4 GB. And I'm also assigning a volume which is actually EBS for 3 GB. Okay, I'm assigning for 3 GB. We can also do it later. I will also assign one more 5 GB 5 GB volume again once we machine is deployed. Let's imagine give 3. So you're going to add tags, give a name of the machine which is EBS testing, configure security group, review and launch it. Okay, now click on view instances. Now if you see, the machine is deployed. Okay, so now I need to log into this machine. I'll select it, copy. Okay, right. Now what I want to do is, let's type LSBLK. If I type LSBLK, means list blocks, you will see 3 drives. Obviously, one is our 8 GB drive. This is drive, and inside the drive we have a partition, and we have our 4 GB instance store, and we have our 3 GB EBS volume. Now I want to add one more drive. I want to show you how can I add one more volume. So which is, I'm going to add one more, which is something like let's put like 1 GB volume. Yeah. So how I'll do that, I'll go to here, go back to the EC2, and the EC2 you have something called as volumes. Select that volumes. Now I'm going to create a volume. Now I'm going to give a size, let's give it 2 GB, but it will feel very bad. So let's give it 2 GB. And the important thing is, you need to create that volume where your machine is. Your machine is US East 1A. You're supposed to create in 1A only. Don't expect I create the volume in 1F and I want to plan that to mount it to server in 1A, because let me tell you, availability zones are different data centers basically. So don't expect like you're going to put your external flash drive in different your friend's home, and if you want to map it to here, map it to your home actually, which is not work, right? So normally what you need to understand is, so whenever you create basically whenever you create a machine, extra volume, right, it should be in the same place where the machine will be. Okay, now let's create it. I'm just going to give 2 GB and then I'll say create it. Once you create, you can mount it. So let's see where exactly it is. You can see there. So I'm going to select it, right click, attach, EBS testing, and attach it. 1 minute, guys. Okay, so let's go back here and type again lsblk. This time you should see one more drive. If you see this 2 GB drive, earlier it was not there, now you see the 2 GB drive. Now what we need to understand here is this 2 GB and 3 GB are new disks. It is not straight, you can't use it right now because you need to format it and you need to make a file system on it and then you need to mount it. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create two drives basically, which is mkdir, and I'm going to use 3 GB drive and 2 GB drive because the plan is to mount it. Okay, now first I will format the 2 GB drive and then I'll assign it, I will actually mount it uh, to this folder, which is 2 GB drive folder. Okay, how I'm going to do that? Type f disk dev and xvdf, hit enter. So m for help, but we are going to create a partition. If you press P, it will check if there are any existing partitions. If you see there is no partition, so you select N, which is a new partition, put P, which is a default, just hit enter 3 times. And finally, this is the most important step, put W so that it will save. So done. Okay, if I type lsblk now see under the 2 GB drive, right, this is the disk and there is a partition which is created xvd1. Similarly, we need to create under 3G also. This has nothing to do with the AWS, by the way. This has nothing to do with the AWS. This is basically Linux skills. Again, fdisk dev xvdc. So I'm going to say new partition, primary 1 2 3 and W, lsblk, done. So now we have converted our physical like a physical drive or a raw drive into a partition. Now we need to create a file system on this one. How? mkfs ext3 dev xvdf1 and again xvdc1. Right, so what happened? We have like this. I have created a file. Now I'm going to mount it. How I'm going to mount it? So lsblk, now the command is mount dev xvdf1 2 GB drive. Next is xvdc1 3 GB drive. Now let's see, if I type df-h, right, you will see your temporary instance store is mounted to media ephemeral. Ephemeral means temporary. It's an ephemeral relationship, means it's a temporary relationship. Okay, now I have mounted to the 2 GB drive as well as 3 GB drive. Now let me tell you one important thing here. You need to make sure this should be in fstab file. Otherwise, right now, whatever the partitions and mount points, the mount points you did to 2 GB and 3 GB drive, right, it is in the memory of this server. So what will happen if this server reboots? Then the mount points will go, data won't go, but your mount points won't be there. So for that, you need to nano etc fstab. I'll open that. What I'll do is, let me tell you, I'm going to give only one, which is 2 GB. I'm going to give you. Let's see what will happen, because you should know, right? I'm going to give xvdf1 here. Here I'm going to give this 2 GB drive, ext3 I'm going to put like this. Done. Okay, completed. So 2 GB drive, it's completed. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some files on ephemeral storage as well as 2 GB drive as well as 3 GB drive, and we're going to stop the server and start the server. So first what I'm going to do is I'm going to cd media ephemeral. So here I'm going to create some 5 files: nano file 1, test file 1 created by, yeah. Now I'm going to make file okay, good. Now I'm going to copy all these files to cp files to 2 GB drive, 3 GB drive. So see, I have all the files and also the in ephemeral also. Now let's stop and start the server. I'll go here. So I'm going to stop, not reboot by the way. Okay, stop it. Click on yes. Let's wait. Yeah, let's see, is it stopped or not? Okay, let's start it again. Yeah, right click, start. Okay, done. Obviously this won't work because the IP might have changed, so I need to copy the IP again. Okay, right. Now let's see what happened to our data. First, what I'm going to, whether I say that the mount points or not, or is there or not. So if I type df-h, right, you can clearly see the 2 GB drive is there, but there is no 3 GB drive. Why? Because if you see nano etc fs tab, so what I kept only this 2 GB drive. That's why when the reboot happen, it will check it out whether it is mentioned here or not. That's why it's not showing. Okay, so the reason I'm saying this one, it is very important. You make sure you mention things here. Otherwise, if you don't mention is, if there is some sort of a reboot happens, you will going to lose your mount. Data will be safe, by the way. It's not like data gone somewhere. But what you need to understand is the mount don't happen, so your application won't come up. That's the problem. Okay, so if I type mount dev xvdc1, 3 GB drive. Okay, so if you see under 3 GB drive, I still see the file 1 to 5. Under 2 GB drive, I can still see 5 files, but under media and ephemeral, you won't see any files. So what you need to understand is instance store is a temporary volume, it's not a permanent, whereas EBS is a permanent volume. So you can also increase the volume of EBS. So how I'm going to do is I'm going to make this 2 GB into 5 GB. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to the volumes here. So we have the 2 GB volume, right? So I'll make it modify volume. So if you try to make it basically 1 GB, say the volume can only be increased, not decreased. So you can't decrease the volume. So give it 5 and modify. So it is saying that to make changes to take full effect, you need to extend at OS level also. Okay, I'll tell you what exactly it is. I'm going to click on yes. Now what will happen is the volume, right, from 2 GB it will be changed to 5 GB, but doesn't mean that it is by default it is actually increased at the host level also. For example, lsblk, if I type it, so it is showing still, see it is showing 5 GB, but see the partition is still at 2 GB. Okay, so we need to extend the file system here. So what we'll do is we have Linux partition here, expanding a Linux partition. So here Linux file system, I need to expand and file system. So first I need to extend the file system. So what I'll do, so lsblk is fine, I think. There is something called as parted, I think so. lsblk gdisk, because a lot of options are there, so better we always use. Okay, let's try to use this one, sudo parted. And which one you want to expand? I want to expand xvdf1. Okay, welcome to parted help, and here fine. So you need to say parted unit yes print. So change the part units measured into sectors. But no, I think there is one more easy way to do that one. Let me check it out. So here it is getting lsblk df-h. Let's try to this one. Yeah, grow part xvdf. Okay, so lsblk, if you see I use that grow part dev, this one. So if you see now the partition as well as this one both are at 5 GB. So if I type df-h, sorry, df-h, now the problem is if you see the mount is still showing 2 GB only. That is the problem. You need to make the file system. For that one you need to use resize fs xvdf1. Run that. Now it will be extended. If I type basically df-h, now it should show the 5 GB. See, earlier it was showing 2 GB. Now it is showing 5 GB. So what are the steps we perform? first we made the volume from 3 GB, 2 GB to 3 GB. Once that is done, we use something called as a grow part. So this is the XVDF one, this is the partition we can give it, so it expanded. After that, you can see like it is become something like this. After that, we use the resize fs to extend the file system also. This is how basically the elastic block store will work. Still, we have some more called as different types of storage, different types of EBS volumes. So what exactly the different types of EBS volumes is, since I have time, I'll explain that one as well. So when we create a volume, okay, there are basically 5 different types of volumes. Sorry, let's stop it here, because I need to tell what is the major difference. When we need to use the instance store, when we need to use the elastic block store, that is important, right? So I told you that instance store is basically a temporary storage, as well as EBS is a permanent storage. Now when we need to use this instance store, so for example, when you are deploying some machine, when you click on launch instance, if you are launching some instance, if you have only EBS only, then there is no issue. But you are deploying something, you're also getting like 1 into 75 GB. How you are going to utilize it? What you are going to put in that 75 GB? Because anyway, you know that it is basically not going to save the data if the reboot happens, right? So now if you take this server, which is actually M5 large, you will get 75 GB of instance store basically. Now when this will be very useful is, imagine if you are if I'm deploying a database server. In database server, it will contain different drives in that one. One is obviously, just imagine Windows, it's a C drive, which is for operating system. I'm going to use for D drive for data, L drive for logs, now T for temp DB. Every database will have a temp DB, and P for page file. Now in this all these things, right? Temp DB and page file is a temporary purpose only. It is not holding any actually active data. These are temporary purpose. So what I can do, if I'm using a M5D large, so I will make sure the page file, imagine this is coming with how much it is coming with, like 8 GB of RAM basically. That means what it is going to do is, it will consume a virtual memory. In Windows, where you find the virtual memory, if you go to system properties, here in advanced settings, advanced change, right, this is where you have the virtual memory basically. If we select automatically manage, right, it will actually put everything in your operating system drive. It will be like 1.5 times of the RAM, so you are actually consuming 12 GB of your operating system drive. So if you have this instance store, right, what I'm going to put, that one is in this instance store. So what will happen, anyway instance store is fine, and I don't need to waste my C drive data, which is my operating system drive data. Anyway, that is not having any active data, so even something it stop and starts, there is no data loss. That is where we need to use the instance store. So this is a basic difference between elastic block store as well as instance store at operational level. Yeah, questions guys? Any
One
questions?
question.
Yeah.
Yeah. In case we stop and start the server and we lose these this instance storage. So then how we can restore it? Is there a way to restore it, or it will be
No,
completely
you can't
lost
restore
forever?
it, it's gone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And okay, fine. So basically, if it's correct to say that if there's a physical server, and let's say the physical server has a local storage, and it's also connected to SAN, so the SAN
Mhm.
storage would be the one which is EBS, and the local storage would be something like instance store.
Yes, you're right. Yeah. Local hard
Okay.
drive. Your local
Yeah,
hard
local.
drive is missing instance store. Yeah.
Okay.
Questions? Chalo guys, that's it for the today. So what is the next is we are going to discuss about different types of EBS volumes. For example, right now what will happen, if I go to the volumes, right, let me remove this, right click, terminate. Now, if I go to volumes, yeah, if you create a volume, basically, you have something called as general purpose provisioned IOF. We're going to discuss this in the next class. I think that is on Monday, and I'm going to send a new meeting ID. I don't think this will work because it will expire in another 3-4 days. Better I'll send a new meeting ID in the Monday morning. Please do check your email so that you log into the new meeting ID. Now, that will be valid for at least for 2 weeks. Now we'll discuss about this one. We'll discuss about snapshots in the next class, basically. Once that is done, after that, we're going to go for load balancers. It will take for 2 days. We go for auto scaling. It will take one more day. And finally, we're going for systems manager services. That is the plan. Just giving a heads up so that you can able to study for yourself. Okay. Chalo, see you on Monday. Enjoy the festival. Happy Diwali to everyone. Yeah.
Happy
Bye, guys.
Diwali. Bye.
Happy
Yeah.
Diwali.
Bye.
Diwali to all.